Welcome to World Map Chronicles, where history, exploration, and discovery come alive. In the late 15th century, the world was still vast, mysterious, and largely uncharted. The age of discovery had begun, yet the oceans remained perilous frontiers of courage and ambition. Among the kingdoms of Europe, none was more determined to unlock the secrets of the seas than Portugal, a nation whose destiny was written by the tides. From the cliffs of Sagres to the docks of Lisbon, the air was filled with salt, smoke, and the sound of shipbuilders hammering wood into history. The dream was simple, but world-changing: to find a sea route to India, the legendary land of spices, gold, and silk. Overland routes were dangerous and costly, controlled by Arab traders and guarded by the Ottoman Empire. The sea was the only path left, but no one knew if it even existed. The man chosen to lead this monumental quest was Vasco da Gama, a quiet yet fierce navigator from a noble but modest family. Born in Sines, Portugal, around 1469, Vasco was raised in a world of explorers. His father, Estevão da Gama, had once been appointed to lead a similar voyage but never set sail. When King Manuel I took the throne in 1495, he revived that dream and turned to the younger da Gama to make it real. The year was 1497, and Lisbon's harbor glittered with anticipation. 4 ships built strong and fast awaited their captain. The flagship São Gabriel, her sister ship São Rafael, a smaller caravel, and a supply ship loaded with provisions, gifts, and weapons. Each vessel was manned by sailors, priests, interpreters, and convicts, the latter sent as expendable scouts on unknown shores. At dawn on July 8, 1497, the fleet slipped from the Tagus River into the open Atlantic. As the Portuguese flag unfurled against the wind, cannons fired in salute, and priests offered prayers for safe passage. Da Gama, standing on the deck of the São Gabriel, looked westward. The horizon shimmered, endless and blue, the edge of the known world. The first weeks were calm. The ships sailed down the coast of Africa, following the route pioneered by Bartolomeu Dias a decade earlier. It was Dias who had first discovered the Cape of Good Hope, proving that the Atlantic Ocean connected to the mysterious waters beyond Africa. But even Dias had turned back, defeated by storms and fear. Da Gama's mission was to go further, to find India itself. The journey tested both man and ship. The Atlantic was treacherous, with unpredictable winds and waves that rose like walls. Food spoiled, men fell ill, and tempers flared in the heat. Scurvy, the sailors' silent killer, began to claim victims. Their gums bled, their teeth loosened, and their bodies weakened. Still, Da Gama pressed on. His discipline was harsh, but his resolve unbreakable. By November 1497, the fleet reached St. Helena Bay, south of modern-day Namibia. Here they anchored to repair their ships and gather fresh water. The crew encountered native Khoisan people, a cautious meeting marked by mutual curiosity and fear. The Portuguese traded trinkets for cattle, but mistrust lingered. A small skirmish broke out, and Da Gama ordered his men back to the ships. He was learning quickly. Diplomacy would be as crucial as navigation. From there, they pushed onward. In early December, they faced the mighty Cape of Good Hope, a tempestuous, wind-screaming corner of the earth. For days, monstrous waves battered the ships, threatening to tear them apart. Sailors clung to ropes as thunder split the sky, yet through skill and divine luck, they survived the passage. When calm finally returned, they gazed at the vast blue expanse before them. The Indian Ocean, untouched by European sails. They had crossed the threshold. The fleet anchored briefly at Mossel Bay, then moved up the coast. They stopped at Natal, which da Gama named Natal, because it was discovered on Christmas Day. Beyond lay strange lands and warmer waters. In January 1498, the fleet reached the coast of Mozambique, where da Gama hoped to find allies and information. But the Arab merchants who ruled the Swahili coast saw the Portuguese with suspicion. They mistook da Gama for a Turk, perhaps even an emissary of a rival Islamic power. At first, the Sultan of Mozambique welcomed them, but when gifts were exchanged, he realized da Gama's offerings, coarse cloth and metal trinkets, were far inferior to the gold and silver of Eastern trade. The atmosphere turned hostile. Fearing betrayal, da Gama fired his cannons toward the shore and fled. Further north, the fleet reached Mombasa, a powerful trading city filled with minarets, spices, and foreign ships. But the welcome there was even more dangerous. Da Gama's men were attacked in the night. One boat barely escaped ambush. Again, they fled, battered but alive. Then, in April 1498, hope appeared on the horizon. A small island off the coast of East Africa, shimmering under the equatorial sun. Malindi. Unlike Mombasa, Malindi was a rival port, and its sultan saw the Portuguese as potential allies. Da Gama was received warmly, offered supplies, and most importantly introduced to a man who would change everything, Ahmad ibn Majid, an Arab navigator and master of the Indian Ocean's monsoon winds. With his guidance, da Gama learned the secret of the trade winds, powerful seasonal currents that could carry ships from Africa to India and back. It was knowledge that had eluded Europeans for centuries. On April 24, 1498, Vasco da Gama set sail from Malindi, guided by Ibn Majid's expertise. The ships turned northeast, riding the monsoon across the open sea. For 23 days they sailed without sight of land, navigating by stars and faith alone. The ocean was vast and shimmering, a living mirror of heaven and hell. Men whispered prayers, others lost hope. But da Gama, ever vigilant, stood firm at the helm. Then, at dawn on May 20th, 1498, they saw it, the long green outline of land. Palm trees swayed in the warm breeze. Ahead lay the port of Calicut, modern-day Kozhikode, on the southwest coast of India. They had done it. For the first time in history, a European fleet had reached India by sea. The moment was electrifying. Cannons boomed in celebration. Priests wept and blessed the waters. The men, gaunt from months of hardship, cheered through tears. Da Gama's log simply recorded, "We are near the land of India." But the greatest challenge was yet to come. Not the sea, but the politics, faith, and greed that waited on shore. The coastline of India shimmered like a mirage before Vasco da Gama's weary eyes. It was May 20th, 1498, a date that would forever alter the course of human history. The São Gabriel anchored off the shores of Calicut, a bustling city ruled by the Zamorin, known across the oceans as the gateway to the riches of the East. The sea breeze carried the scent of exotic spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and cardamom, the very treasures that had lured Europe to risk life and empire in search of this fabled land. Da Gama's heart raced as small boats approached, filled with curious merchants and fishermen. After months of storms, scurvy, and near mutiny, his men were astonished to see dark-skinned traders adorned with gold earrings and silk garments. They brought coconuts, rice, and fruit, signs of abundance in this strange new world. Communication was impossible at first, until a Gujarati sailor who spoke a little Arabic appeared and asked, "What do you seek?" Da Gama's interpreter replied proudly, "We seek Christians and spices." The people of Calicut were no strangers to foreign visitors. Arabs, Persians, and Chinese had traded there for centuries. But Europeans arriving by sea was unheard of. When word reached the Zamorin that men from a far-off land called Portugal had come across the Sea of Darkness, he ordered that they be treated with curiosity and respect. The next morning, Da Gama and his officers were escorted through narrow, vibrant streets filled with the smell of incense and spice. Bells rang from temples, and the crowd marveled at these pale-skinned strangers in shining armor. Inside the Zamorin's palace, Da Gama presented gifts from Portugal, cloth, coral, and trinkets, which to the Indian ruler seemed unimpressive compared to the rich offerings brought by Arab traders. Nevertheless, Da Gama explained his purpose. He wished to open a direct line of trade between Portugal and India, bypassing the Islamic powers that controlled the overland routes. The Zamorin listened politely but was skeptical. He asked, "If your king is as great as you say, why has he sent you with such poor gifts?" Despite the diplomatic coolness, Da Gama succeeded in his mission's primary goal. He had reached India by sea and proven that the route around Africa was real. Over the next weeks, he learned about the spice markets, the weights and measures used in trade, and the influence of Muslim merchants who dominated the coast. He realized that without valuable goods to offer, Portugal could not compete. But he also saw opportunity. By late August, as monsoon winds shifted, Da Gama prepared to sail home. He left behind a small delegation to gather intelligence and took on precious cargo, sacks of pepper, cinnamon, and jewels, to display in Lisbon. The return voyage was brutal. Scurvy decimated the crew, storms scattered the ships. Out of 170 men, fewer than 60 survived. Yet when São Gabriel limped into Lisbon in September 1499, the cheers could be heard across the Tagus River. Vasco da Gama had done what no man before him had achieved. He had connected Europe and Asia by sea. King Manuel I of Portugal declared him Admiral of the Indian Seas and showered him with honors. Lisbon became the new center of world trade, its docks overflowing with spices, silks, and gold. Portugal's empire was born. The news spread like wildfire across Europe. Venice trembled, the Ottomans fumed, and Spain hastened to expand its own empire westward. The age of discovery had found its new hero, but triumph was shadowed by ambition. In 1502, Da Gama returned to India at the head of a massive fleet of 20 ships. This time, he came not as an explorer, but as an enforcer. The king's orders were clear: to secure trade by any means necessary. What followed was a brutal chapter in the history of empire. Upon reaching Calicut, Da Gama demanded that the Zamorin expel the Muslim merchants. When the ruler refused, Da Gama bombarded the city from the sea, setting fire to homes and ships. He captured an Arab trading vessel, executed its crew, and sent their dismembered bodies ashore as a warning. The man who had once been hailed as a pioneer of exploration had become an instrument of conquest. Portuguese fortresses soon dotted the Indian coastline, at Cochin, Cananore, and eventually Goa. Da Gama's route opened not just trade, but a floodgate of colonization. Yet even amid the violence, there was admiration. Indian chroniclers described the Portuguese ships as floating fortresses, beasts of wood and iron that breathed fire. The world had changed forever. Years passed, and Vasco da Gama faded from the front lines of exploration. He lived in wealth and semi-retirement in Portugal, overseeing the growing empire he had helped create. But the lure of the East never left him. In 1524, now an old man, he was appointed Viceroy of India, a final mission to bring order to a colony consumed by corruption. When he returned to the Indian coast after 25 years, the once young explorer was greeted with awe and fear. Yet the voyage took its toll. Within months of arriving in Cochin, Vasco da Gama fell ill with malaria. On Christmas Eve, 1524, he died, far from home, on the same shores that had made him immortal. He was buried in Cochin. His body later returned to Portugal with full honors. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy endured. The route he charted reshaped global commerce, religion, and power. Europe's wealth flowed from the spices of India, and Portugal became a maritime superpower. The oceans were no longer barriers but bridges. From the decks of the São Gabriel to the royal courts of Lisbon, Vasco da Gama's journey had spanned continents and centuries. He had seen death, discovery, greed, and glory, and in doing so, had bound together worlds that had once been oceans apart. As the sun set over the Arabian Sea, waves lapping against Cochin's shores, it was said that da Gama's spirit lingered with the tide, forever chasing the horizon, forever sailing into the unknown.